Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview. It's with Ronnie Lee, one of the most important people in the animal rights movement, the founder of the A.L.F, Animal Liberation Front. He's got his new book coming out in the spring and definitely going to be a good read. So he's going to tell you all about it, all about his life, and if you like what you hear, subscribe, because it's a long interview and it will be cut up into parts. I'm just going to say it now in Spanish for all our Spanish people out there. And the interview is obviously in English and it will be translated below in Spanish. Enjoy Animal Liberation at its very best. Hola a todos. Voy a presentaros una entrevista con alguien que para mí es una de las personas más importantes en el movimiento animalista. Es el Ronnie Lee. Ronnie Lee es el fundador del A.L.F, del movimiento FLA. Nacido en 1951, británico, y a punto de sacar su nuevo libro que se llama The Animals Freedom Fighter. Espero que disfrutes igual que yo he disfrutado entrevistando a esta persona tan especial. Es una entrevista que va a estar dividida en varios capítulos. Si te gusta, suscríbete, porque así de esta manera puedes ver los demás capítulos. Liberación animal. The book, when's it coming out? It's done by McFarlane's publisher, The Animals Freedom Fighter. Is it coming out in the spring, is that right?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to come out in March. I mean, what time in March, I don't know, but that's the date I've been given. But
Perfect.
Whether or not that will happen, I don't know. I'll probably hear more within the next few weeks about that.
Excellent.
But hopefully it won't be too long now.
Right, and are you pleased with the book, the way it's been? Biography's been done by John Hochstartner, is that the right way to pronounce it?
John Hochstartner.
Hochstartner, okay, yeah, I've seen some of his stuff, he's really good. Excellent stuff, yeah.
He's a good writer, he's a vegan, he's pro-animal rights, he's a journalist. I've seen, obviously, he sent me a copy of the book that he sent to the publishers, and overall I was very pleased with it. There may still be some small alterations to make to the text, because that's got to kind of come back from the publishers again, and I'll probably have to have another read through and maybe make some changes, but it looks good.
Right.
It should be a good read.
What I want to say, what was the inspiration of writing the book? How did you get the idea to actually write a book? Did it just kind of flash, or did you is this something you've been planning for many years?
People have been saying to me for quite a few years that I should write a book. Now, writing a book, it isn't, and I did at one time try to write a book.
Right.
Many years ago, but it was too much. It was too long. I'm all right at writing quite short articles, but I found that writing a book, was too much. And so I realised that the only way that a book was going to be written about me would be by somebody else. And friends and supporters have been saying for quite a few years that there should be a book written about my life, and there've been a couple of attempts. A couple of friends have said that they would write a book, but for some reason or other it hasn't. That always fell through. It never happened. And then when John offered to write the book, I think that was late last year. Well, no, late the year before, of course, because we're in a new year now. So it would have been in probably around about December 2015, I think it was. He suggested, writing my biography.
Fantastic.
And I said, yeah, that's brilliant, because that's what I'd like. And so we did a series of interviews. I think we probably did about 20 interviews altogether. Every week we'd have an interview, and some of the interviews were really long. I think there was one that went on for about 6 hours, where he went through my life, talked about different stages of my life, and then he'd email me what he'd written, and I'd send him back some corrections and suggestions, and that's how the book was put together.
Excellent. So, I mean, I know you've been doing animal liberation since like the 70s. I was reading as well, it was like 1824, we had the Band of Mercy, it's going back that long. Then you took that name on yourselves, and then you kind of said, okay, we're going to do this, the Animal Liberation Front, because you've actually done 3 stints in prison, haven't you? All told, for obviously animal rights activities.
Yeah, I've done 3 prison sentences.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what happened was the Band of Mercy was formed in 1973. There was actually 6 of us that founded the Band of Mercy, and basically we were people that were already involved in campaigning for animal rights. Most of us were involved in the hunt saboteurs.
Yeah.
There were 1 or 2 people involved in other campaigns, and we decided that more needed to be done. That a kind of an additional form of action, more hard-hitting form of action needed to take place to change things.
Yeah.
And so we met up. We met in a cafe in London. I remember it was in a basement cafe in London, and we sat in the corner of this cafe. It was kind of quite secretive. And we had this meeting and decided to form the Band of Mercy. And yes, we chose the name. The group that was in the 19th century was actually an RSPCA youth group, surprisingly enough.
Wow.
I think the RSPCA, or certainly the youth groups, a lot more militant in those days than they are now. And these young people would do direct action. They'd cause damage to guns used by shooters, for instance, and we felt it would be good to revive that, and so we chose that name.
Yeah.
And that was in 1973. And then I was put in prison, and we started carrying out actions. So the first actions we took were against hunt kennels. We damaged vehicles belonging to various hunts to try and stop them going out hunting. And we tried to burn down an animal research laboratory that was being built.
Perfect. Yeah.
There was nobody there. We waited till all the workforce had gone home, and we made 2 attempts to burn it down. It didn't burn down. Quite a lot of damage was done. It didn't burn down. Yeah. Unfortunately. And then we destroyed a couple of boats. So we destroyed one and damaged the other one. They were being used for seal hunting, for hunting baby seals. So that was another thing we did. And then we carried out various attacks on places that bred animals for experiments. We mainly damaged their vehicles, the vehicles they used to transport the animals to the laboratories. Right. So we took a lot of action. There was only a small number of us.
Yeah.
But eventually a couple of us got arrested, and I ended up being sentenced to 3 years in prison. I didn't serve years. I only served, because it was my first time in prison, I was let out after a year. So I came out of prison in 1976, and it was later in 1976 that the Band of Mercy actually changed its name to the Animal Liberation Front, because people were thinking that the Band of Mercy sounded like some religious organisation. Didn't mention animals. It didn't really mention what we were all about. Yeah. So we came up with the name of Animal Liberation Front to as a better name for the group and a better description of what we were doing. So in round about I think it was around about June of 1976. That's when the name changed to the Animal Liberation Front, and then activities carried on in the same way. But I did subsequently serve two more prison sentences, and in fact I spent a total of about 9 years in prison. Yeah,
I was adding up today, and I came to that. Also, I was going to say, you are the first person to have done a hunger strike for vegan food and vegan clothing while being in prison in the actual movement.
That's right. I was probably one of the first animal rights prisoners myself, and the other guy that was put in prison at the same time, Cliff Goodman.
Yeah.
I think we were the first animal rights prisoners, and when I was put in prison, I found that there was no provision for vegans. No. They just expected me to just have a vegetarian diet and just eat what I could.
Yeah.
But that wasn't good enough, so I went on hunger strike, and I was on a hunger strike for 10 days, and then in the end they agreed to give me a vegan diet. I mean, it wasn't a brilliant diet, but it was okay.
You could survive on it.
So
yeah.
then I came off hunger strike, and I was able to have vegan food.
Excellent. When was you first, like, what age were you when you first kind of went to vegetarian or vegan? How did you do the transition from one thing to another? How did it go? Was you eating meat from when you was a very young age and then you changed later on? How did it work out for you?
Well, it kind of happened fairly quickly. I became vegetarian when I was 19. And how I became vegetarian was my sister was going out with a guy who was a vegetarian, and he was a very good athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very fit and healthy, and he'd been vegetarian for a number of years. And I was curious as to why he was vegetarian. And he said it was because there was no need for us to eat animals, and so it was wrong to kill and eat other animals because he didn't need to. And he was really healthy. He'd been a vegetarian for a few years, and at the time I was a big meat eater. I used to eat loads of meat. But this kind of got to me, the fact, because I always cared about animals, and I'd always tried to rescue animals, and during my younger years, and so I started thinking about what he said, and I decided that I had to become a vegetarian myself. So I became a vegetarian. I wasn't aware of anything being wrong with the dairy industry or the egg industry. I didn't know, like a lot of vegetarians, I wasn't aware of any of that. And then a couple of years later, when I was 21, because I went vegetarian when I was 18, I think, and then about a year and a couple of years or 2.5 years later, I was in the local town centre near where I lived, and there was a shop selling health food, and there was an advert in the window for vegetarian food. You see, I didn't really know there's any kind of special vegetarian food, so that kind of made me interested. I went in the shop to get some of this food, and I picked up a copy of the Vegetarian Society's magazine. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even aware there was a vegetarian society, but I thought, that's interesting. I'm a vegetarian. There's a vegetarian society. I'll buy the magazine. And I think as I was going home on the bus, I started reading the magazine, and there was stuff in there about all sorts of animal abuse. There was an article about veganism. There were adverts from people like the League Against Cruel Sports, an anti-vivisection organisation, people against the fur trade, and all that kind of thing. And I was horrified because I wasn't really aware of any of this. I knew that animals were killed for meat, and I didn't want to eat meat. I didn't want to be part of that. But I wasn't aware of there being anything wrong with the egg industry or the dairy industry. I wasn't aware of vivisection. I wasn't aware of factory farming, or not really aware of blood sports or anything like that. And so all of a sudden, I received all this information, and I thought, right, I've got to do something about this. This is terrible, I've got to be involved in trying to stop this. And so I sent away to the Vegan Society for information, and I joined all these other societies. I spent loads of money joining all these societies. I got information from Vegan Society, and within a couple of weeks I had become vegan. Yeah. And I also joined all these other groups, and I very quickly became involved in hunt saboteurs, because there was a news item on the television about the hunt sabs. And that made me aware of hunt saboteurs, so I found out where my nearest hunt sab group was, and I got involved with them, and I went out sabbing hunts, and that's how it all began.
Excellent, yeah. Because, I was just going to say, a little while ago, I went through some old boxes going back, some of my old school stuff and that, and I found loads of copies of the Vegetarian Society magazine, and because it was the same for me a little bit, very similar. I remember thinking that you just had to stop eating meat. And then you realise about the dairy industry, the fur industry, the hunting, the vivisection, and there's so many aspects to animal suffering. It's just absolutely incredible, the amount of stuff that we've got around us. It's everywhere you look. It's absolutely terrible the way we take animals and we just exploit them for our own needs. all the way down the line. It's just terrible. So the other thing I wanted to ask, do you think there's enough being done right now for, as far as animal rights goes? Do you think that the abuse on animals is getting worse? Do you think we're going backward instead of forward?